Shalom, shalom, Israel. First and foremost, I want to give all honor, glory, and praise unto YAHAWAH, BA'Shem YAHAWASHI, BA'Shem RAKWAKWADASH. Double honors to the elders and apostles of great millstone. Shalom to the mighty Akim Wa'akwathim, who are diligently waiting to be delivered from his foul captivity, as well as a speckled bird that may look like the other nations, but are actually Yasharallah. This is Brother Kawakab coming at you with another lesson. Today's lesson, I want to talk about, the spirit that gets on, the spirit in us that determines who we are, as well as who we serve. All right, and the inspiration from this just really comes from, I was just thinking how really, if you think about it, like oftentimes, well, the main thing is, let me get a precept first. This will do a better job at explaining it. 1 John chapter 4 verse 1, Beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits whether they are of Yahweh, because many false prophets are gone out into the world. And that's the first thing is, let's say for example someone that is a so-called black person says, oh yeah, I'm a man of God, I'm a this and a third. For us, we might think, oh yeah, that's a good person, oh, like that's great. Like say for example Clef Flow Dollar, or maybe a Bishop TD Snakes and whatnot. You might say, okay, yeah, these people are good. They're pastors, they're men of the Lord. They're black, they're this and they're whatever. Okay, well, obviously, for us, through our perspective, maybe we might say, oh, a black pastor, that's good and stuff like that, but maybe not for everyone else. But you get the point, all right? We might say, yeah, this is a good. I want to follow this person and whatnot, all right? But in actuality, all right, they are actually wicked demons and stuff like that. Like, you don't want to be near them. You actually don't want to be near them because they are actually like genuine like monsters. And I think multiple churches have been exposed. I think that's crazy. I literally heard, I have been hearing a whole bunch of these church pastors and stuff like that getting exposed for a whole bunch of different stuff. There was that Clef, I don't know who it was. Matt something. Church pastor. Marvin Sapp. Okay, Marvin Sapp basically holding his whole congregation hostage until they give him freaking what, 20,000 something thousand, 70,000, $50,000, something like that. I don't know. All right, I don't remember the thing, but that was one of the things. Another thing was, I actually saw a brother do the lesson on it. I think it's this brother who did the video. It was, what happened was, if I can't find it, I'll just tell you. But oh, it wasn't him. I think it was him. Basically, what happened was that there was a church that had a bunch of slave labor.
So the Zimbabwean president has signed into law, a contentious law. People are very angry about it. This bill requires that all motorists buy a radio license before acquiring vehicle insurance. So before you get an insurance for the road, you have to have a radio.
Yeah, basically, there was a bunch of church. There was a church that had a whole bunch of slave labor.
There's an outcry about Zimbabweans. They're asking them to pay about $92 for this license. $92. Now trust me, Zimbabwe is not the richest country in Africa. They've been through a lot. It's actually one of the poorest countries in Africa. Zimbabweans are all over the place. A lot of them left Zimbabwe, going to South Africa looking for better life, getting jobs such as gardeners, security guards.
Okay, I can't find it. So whatever, it's fine. But like there's been a lot, and there was that one Edomite pastor or figurehead, whatever, that got exposed for harassing some girl in his congregation and whatnot. All right, so basically what he did was he was touching her and stuff like that, making her feel uncomfortable. But because he was a pastor, he was using that to his advantage to make it so that she just trusted him. She just blindly trusted him, and then he would, do whatever the fuck he wanted, and until several years later or something like that, she would say, okay, well, now I want to come out and say he did this X, Y, and Z, not, which I honestly just never liked that. I always hate how these people do these types of stuff where me personally, I just don't like where they come out later. I would just prefer if they just came out immediately, but oh well, it's not. I don't know. Me personally, I just don't like this whole waiting to use it at a random time afterwards. But anyway, to continue on, but at the same time, I to their defense, I will say that whenever oftentimes these types of people are protected, so it is harder to kind of like come out with this type of stuff because they are protected, and the people, they don't really look at things from an objective standpoint. They will just defend these leaders and not give these people a second thought oftentimes. All right, but yeah, you basically get it. So the stuff about this is that going back to the initial topics, Lakia, we're basically supposed to be trying the spirit to see, okay, is this a spirit that's of YAHAWAH and His, or is this a spirit of the devil? Okay, now what are these spirits? Let's actually get them. Now the first one, easiest to show, John 8:44, ye are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there was no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. All right, so this is the thing where we are separate from this because we follow our Heavenly Father, Yahawadah and His. Okay, so as a result of that, we try our best to live our lives according to His word. On the flip side of that, you have these other followers, okay, that are the followers of the devil, followers of Esau, Edom, and their goal is, okay, let's go do this. Let's go follow self-serving beliefs. How do we exalt ourselves? How do we make ourselves seem righteous? How do we make ourselves, the center of attention, or the best thing possible, and all that stuff? Like, this is what these people do. All right, so as a result of that, this is where they are the father of the devils, where they will lie and try to change stuff up, and not let actual judgment, not let actual proper things go in their proper order. All right, where things are corrupted. That's why even with leadership now, the leaders, the government, all right, they get away with doing so much stuff. Okay, how many times have these people been reported for doing something? How many times have they been reported for doing something, and then nothing happened as a result of it? All right, bear with me one moment, Slakia. All right, Slakia. So continuing on, Slakia for the thing, pause. But continuing on, the next thing I want to establish is, who are the sons of Yahawah. Okay, so Mark chapter 3 verse 35. For whosoever shall do the will of Yahawah, Slakia. Sorry, word. Mark 3:35. For whosoever shall do the will of Yahawah, the same is my brother and my sister and mother. So over here we're establishing that you are a part of the family of YAHAWAH, or the household of YAHAWAH, simply if you are doing the will of YAHAWAH. And this is a very easy thing to identify, not necessarily easy thing to identify, because you have to, it's basically through person's actions, okay? And it doesn't mean like, oh, you're just keeping a law. That's not that in and of itself is not necessarily the thing, and it is more so following the entire word of what YAHAWAH and YAHAWASHI has established and set up. Okay, so it is a part of it is, yes, keeping the law, but it's also kind of a sense of like walking down the path of, you know, what Yahawashi had set as the example for us to follow, which is, you know, self-sacrificing, you know, pushing to please and work towards the fulfillment of, you know, what prophecy, like waking our people up, waking up ourselves, you know, constantly pushing this word out as prophets and whatnot. These are the different types of things. And when we have, when we show that we have this spirit, then that's when, okay, we are able to be identified as, okay, you know, this is an Israelite. Okay, this also ties into identifying other Israelites, as in, like, say for example, say a so-called Chinese-looking person is, you know, making videos. Okay, that is another example of that. Okay, that's another example of someone that is the truth, you know, pushing this word out. Okay, because pushing this word out because, or maybe in another language, simply because what's it called? They woke up to the fact that they are an Israelite, and, you know, their bloodline goes back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay, all right, and, you know, that's the thing where you I have heard that, you know, there's one camp in the Philippines. There's a camp in the Philippines. There's one in Great Britain. There's also one in I think these are only the GMS camps that I know of. I don't know of any other camps in other nations. I think keyword think. Oh yeah, I do remember. IUIC did go to one of the countries in Africa. I don't know which country, but I think that was only temporary. So there is that as well. But yeah, just in general, where you see there can be some Israelites that wake up, and again, it goes back into the speckled bird, because, you know, let's say for example, as a so-called black man who lived in China, for example, okay, he lived 200 years ago. He had a kid with a Chinese woman, okay? A full so-called black man, for the sake of argument, and a full so-called Chinese woman had a kid. That kid turned out half Chinese, half black, so-called, all right? And then he looks darker. He looks darker than his mom, lighter than his father, all right? And then that boy grows up, gets with a full Chinese woman. Then, for the sake of argument, that kid that half black, half Chinese boy gets with, that kid that the half Chinese boy has with that full Chinese woman turns out to look like a full-on Chinese boy. Okay, that would be an example of a diaspora or a speckled bird, because he might look like a so-called Chinese person, but he's actually an Israelite, simply because from his father's side, that's what determines, you know, who's an Israelite. But the thing about that example is that example is oftentimes more radicalized. All right, and what I mean by radicalized is that instead of just a grandfather that's actually black, and then the father is half black, so-called half black, then it's actually the great grandfather was so-called half black, and then he just kept on having sons, and then and eventually the bloodline stayed with them for him to be looking like a so-called Chinese person, but he's actually, from his father's side, goes all the way back to the so-called black man, and then Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and so on and so forth. All right, so like these are the things that you have to actually like understand that you can't just determine or say that someone is an Israelite or is a race of nation or whatever just based off their appearance. All right. So it doesn't matter about their appearance. It matters about, the father's bloodline. Does the father go back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? Yes, then that means that they're an Israelite regardless of what they look like. Okay. And again, that's a very big issue. That's why rather than saying that, okay, well, this person looks like a so-called white person, I don't mess with them, you have to say, okay, you know what, let me talk to them, let me hear how they feel about this truth. So when someone says, oh no, you're preaching hate, you're doing this, that, and the third, and that's when you know, okay, you know what, this is clearly not for you. This is clearly not, and that's why, we're not supposed to be trying to force people to believe this. This is not something to be forced on people. If someone does not, let's get that. As a matter of fact, if someone does not mess with this, then the Lord is the one who blinded them. Okay.
How can a minister of international relations sit in a meeting on metal?
Luke chapter 9 verse 5, and whosoever will not receive you when you go out of that city, shake off the very dust of your feet for a testimony against them. So basically, when you're trying to speak to someone, they're saying, regardless of what they look like, if they're so-called black, Hispanic, white, Asian, whatever, you still have to you give them, if the Lord put you to speak to them and they don't want to hear it, then okay, that you tried, that's it. And clearly they're not an Israelite. But oftentimes which there was this video, I'm not gonna get it, I'll just say it. There was this video where there was this Edomite looking guy who said that he was Irish, all right, and IUIC, either IUIC or ICPK said, oh, you're not an Israelite, you're a heathen. But rather than actually try to talk with him and engage with him, all right, they just dismissed him because they just dismissed him because he looked like a so-called white person, which that is detrimental. And it's that same thing can also be applied to other nations, where if you see someone that is, oh, that's a Chinese person, oh, that's a Middle Eastern person, oh, that's a Russian or whatever, you can't just dismiss them based off of their appearance, because in actuality, if the fact that that so-called Edomite looking dude, or as he's called himself, an Irish dude, all right, even bothered to want to have that conversation and was able to say, okay, what, I agree with this, I'm an Israelite, I'm this, I'm that, and third, and whatnot. While I'm not saying to just believe everyone, okay, as the scriptures say, it says, First John chapter 4 verse 1, beloved, believe not every spirit, okay, but try the spirits whether they are of Yahweh. And if he resonates with the truth, if he's like saying, well, I actually do agree with that, like I see, and you see the sincerity in his words, you see the sincerity in how he's actually receptive to the things that you are preaching and teaching, then that's when, okay, you know what, this is actually an Israelite. And that's how we determine if someone is an Israelite or not, because the Lord, as per the scriptures, as per the scriptures, the Lord said, he's only dealing with the Israelites. Okay, let me actually get that first, just to identify it definitively. Isaiah 45 verse 4. Isaiah 45 verse 4, for Jacob my servant's sake, and Israel mine elect, I have even called thee by thy name, I have surnamed thee, though thou hast not known me. That's basically the thing where the elect are the Israelites. All right. So as a result of that, the thing to really take note of and to understand is that the elect it is prophesied that the elect are the Israelites, number one. So if it looks like, okay, keyword looks like, that a so-called white person is getting it, if that so-called white person, okay, has a father that looks like a so-called white man, okay, that doesn't disqualify him from being an Israelite, all right, because you don't know what their ancestry is, okay, and hell, maybe oftentimes they don't even know sometimes, I won't say all the time, but sometimes they don't even know what their ancestry is past a few what's it called? A few things, a few generations. Lucky, that was the term. Okay, so as a result of that, you can't just say, oh well, this person looks white, so I'm not gonna mess with them, or this person looks Chinese, I'm not gonna mess with them. That's why you have to try the spirits. So basically what I'm trying to say is that simply because a so-called Chinese person or a so-called Indian or a so-called white person is receptive and is actually learning, and accepts YAHAWAH and is actually attempting to follow the word of YAHAWAH to Yahawashi to the best of their ability. All right, that's the determining factor of this person is an Israelite, and this person is, a follower of Yahawadah. This person just may be a part of the elect. All right. So as a result of that, it's a very gradual process, because not everyone can just keep on pushing through this, because there's always going to be that slip in the cracks where they're like, okay, well, I see that thing, I see that they're starting to show signs of, I just don't mess with this anymore. Just as there have been. There's been plenty of Israelites that left camps because, okay, well, I'm not messing with this anymore. This was just a phase. This was just a trend. I don't like this. I don't like people saying that I'm in a hate group. I'm in a cult, this and the third and whatnot. Like there are people like this that where the spirit itself reveals itself to us. Okay, or I'll say us as Israelites in general, are that, okay, this person was never a part of the elect because they were only doing it for a time and then they left. Okay, it got too hard. They didn't want to finish the race. They didn't want to suffer for Yahweh or Yahawashi, and okay, that's it. Like, don't let them be. All right. What is this? Okay, moving on. Romans chapter 8 verse 16, the Spirit itself bear witness with our spirit that we are the children of Yahweh. And that's the thing where the Spirit is going to, take over. We might be trying to put on a persona or a face or a mask on, okay, well, I'm actually a really good person, all right? But for those that actually try to delve deep, all right? As a matter of fact, an example of this is, for me personally, whenever I am I'm speaking to people not in the truth, I always, keep a distance. I always try to, stay, not too friendly. I just keep things cordial, keep things formal, but I don't actually like dive too deep into my personal business, because I just don't want to be associated with certain people. Okay, 'cause I'm very selective about who I associate myself with, and this is not even just in terms of like being a part of the truth. That's just something that I've always done, where I've never really liked to associate myself with just any random person. I would make friends in certain situations out of necessity, of course, but outside of that, whenever like personal stuff gets involved, I would always, forfeit the opportunity to share some of my more intimate details and whatnot. All right, so yeah, but the funny thing about that is, people online, they're too eager, and they share their stuff, everything. Like they literally share everything. It's actually crazy. Like there's no privacy with people right now, which me personally, I don't even get. I don't get that in this day and age. But anyway, continuing on, Romans chapter 8 verse 5, for they that are after the flesh do mind the things of the flesh, but they that are after the Spirit, the things of the Spirit. Okay, so yes, as I said before, and as we established, there are two separate factions, if you will, which is the first one, it being the children, the sons and the children of the devil. Okay, spiritual demon, as well as not necessarily the spiritual demon, more so the physical demon, Satan, which is Esau, Edom. and then the other ones are the sons of Yahweh. Okay, there are the third sons, which are all the other heathen nations, but they're not important right now. Okay, but the second sons are the sons of Yahweh Shai, and as a result of that, the sons of Yahweh Shai are going to follow after the words of the entire word of Yahweh Shai and following the scriptures, whereas the sons of the devil, okay, are going to follow after the devil, basically, and primarily you see that actually, funnily enough, Slakia, you see that actually in this society, where in society is in general, where people, like, say for example, there was this whole issue in esports where people are complaining that Saudi Arabia is taking over esports and they want to be the central location for esports and stuff like that, simply because Saudi Arabia does not support and does not approve of homosexuality, all right, or fuck, I shouldn't have said that, alphabetism, all right, because it's not just that, it's alphabetism as a whole. The FGC, or the esports community, they want to boycott it, or they are speaking out against it simply because they don't follow their own morals. But let me not get into that, Slocky, because that's a whole different thing. So basically, you understand the general concept of things, where certain people, okay, because even then, cause that's two separate sides. That doesn't even have anything to do with sons of Yahweh or Yahawashi. That's the third part of men, and then the second part of men being the sons of the devil, and the sons of man being the complete other nations, other heathen nations that are not the Israelites and are not the Edomites. All right, so like that's a whole different thing. There's a whole two different conflict of butting heads over there. All right, so yeah, like this is how, like, we are not the same. We are clearly different. Okay, but yet there are so many people that just hold true and say, like, okay, we're gonna do this, we're gonna follow this and stuff like that. But their philosophies, their doctrine is the only thing that matters to them, and it is a very self-destructive doctrine. All right, that even the other nations are aware of. Okay. But yes, they are of the flesh, whereas we are of the spirit. Okay, so we go and do things through the spirit, and we're not supposed to be copying them, and that's why we steer clear from their ways of doing stuff. Okay, now Proverbs 20 verse 24, man's going of the Lord, how can a man then understand his own way? And that's the thing, to really understand it, is that you might think that, oh, people can put up a facade all their lives and this, that, and the third, but the truth of the matter is that is not really, that's not reality. Okay, you cannot truly, the Lord is basically going to put a spirit on us to be a certain way, to do a certain way. All right, the Lord put a spirit on us to do a certain way and be a certain way, that for us, all right, we are going to, we're always going to have that piece of us that, let's say for example, if you like white women, okay, if you're a so-called black man and you like so-called white women, you're always going to have that natural affinity, even if you try to pretend like you don't like white women, and you always try to say, oh, I'm always black queens, this, that, and the third, and whatnot, but you always just go to that white woman, and it's fine. You're allowed to like white women. That is completely up to you. Okay, me personally, I don't. All right, I can see some of the appeal. Okay, just as I can see the appeal for other nations of women as well. But I think even Elder Apostle Tahar even said that if you have to get with a woman, you can get with a so-called white woman. Like I think even he said that you're better off getting with a so-called white woman than getting with a so-called black woman, which that I absolutely agree with. I'm not gonna lie. Although me personally, I would not get with a so-called white woman because I have certain fears and reservations from what I've heard of. Okay, there's been stories where so-called half breeds, okay, like half a kid that's has a so-called black father and white mother. Okay, they've said where their mother was racist to them, even though that's their mother. All right, and they live with that racism and stuff like that, and it was just not a good time. So that's just something that I personally kind of feel I have a reservation for. Although I'm not trying to scare you out of it, or trying to convince you otherwise, because there are benefits. There are also benefits to actually having a white wife, or a white wife. All right, because let's say, for example, if you get pulled over by the police, as long as you're not driving, I would assume you're gonna be fine. All right, and that's just the general idea of it, like where if you actually have a good enough quote unquote white wife, if she's not a speckled bird, okay, if she's actually just a literal Edomite woman, all right, and which is okay, by the way, then there are definitely benefits if she's not a complete demon. If she's not a complete demon, then there are benefits to having her. But again, I'm just saying, me personally, I don't think it's on my spirit to do it. Which again, that goes back into the initial topic of it, where that goes back to the initial topic of it. Slakia. That goes back into the initial topic where it is basically the spirit. So if the Lord put the spirit on you to want to deal with so-called white women, that perfect. Then go ahead and do it. Again, I'm not encouraging. I'm not discouraging. All right. I'm simply letting you know, like, this is just how the Lord set things out to be. Okay. So you never know what the Lord might be setting up and preparing for you. All right, for you specifically as a man of the Lord, in terms of this specific topic. Okay, but continuing on, Romans chapter 8 verse 26. Likewise, the Spirit also helpeth our infirmities, for we know not what we should pray for as we ought, but the Spirit itself maketh intercession for us with groanings which cannot be uttered. And that's the thing, where our spirit is going to make intercession with us, oftentimes, like where again we might be doing or saying certain things that we gravitate towards more, that goes against what our minds might be saying. Okay, so our minds might be saying we need to keep this facade up, but then when you hear something like, white people are the devils, or Edomites are the devil, or Edomites are white people, or whatever, and then someone's gonna while you're agreeing with everything else, you're like, oh hell no, you guys are doing this, that, and third, and then that's when that spirit that makes intercession on your behalf, and it gets on you to not stop yourself, to not stop yourself, and to just go off simply because of something that you don't believe in. All right, which that's basically how we can tell who's really with the Lord YAHAWAH and who's not. All right, so yeah, that's basically it. It was a lot. I pray this lesson was edifying. I want to give all honor, glory, and praise unto Yahawadah, SHAMAIWAN, double honors to the elders and apostles, great millstone, Abada, Ball, and Shalom.